Hi guys, welcome back to Girls in the Garden podcast. Today we're going to be finishing our journey through Jonah. Let's get going. So I'm going to be reading Jonah 3:1-5. It says, "The word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Get up, go to the great city of Nineveh and preach the message that I tell you." Jonah got up and went to Nineveh according to the Lord's command. Now Nineveh was an extremely great city, a 3-day walk. Jonah set out on the first day of his walk in the city and proclaimed, "In 40 days Nineveh will be demolished." Then the people of Nineveh believed God. They proclaimed a fast and dressed in sackcloth, from the greatest of them to the least.
Okay. So
You go. Okay.
She seems so excited. Okay. All right. So a little bit of context on the sackcloth and like the stuff. So that was like if you were like fasting or like mourning, like if you're mourning something or like looking upcoming to something, you would like what it would be like with the ashes and sackcloth. It was humbling yourself to God. So like when somebody would put ashes on their forehead or put sackcloth on and start a fast, that would be like, God, I'm humbling myself. You are God. I am not. Now please help me with this. So it was kind of just like, we as people sometimes we hate being humbled. We hate like having to like step down, like show that like, you know what I mean?
Wrong.
Yeah, show we're wrong and all that. But like these people, they realized they were wrong. They're like, oh God, please forgive us. Then they went into a time of like praying and fasting and mourning and stuff.
Yeah, I would say I've been like thinking about it because they're like, I talk to people in my school every day who are atheists and don't believe or agnostic or whatever they believe, like, but they're not believers in God. And so I've been having like a couple good conversations with them, and which our pastor this morning was talking about Genesis and like the creation, and I was like, because I do this to myself, I'm like, okay, if I were in a conversation, what would someone who didn't understand ask me? And so I was thinking like, why did God put the tree in the garden if he knew they were going to eat it, you know? And so it kind of like put in perspective of he gave us a choice, and so
and free will.
In that, yeah, free will. And so in that, every day we go through rejecting ourselves. Like, pick up your cross and follow me. Like, that's rejecting our flesh and rejecting what we want to do. And I think that we don't recognize that all the time. Like, we want things that we can't have, and we think that, oh, that's a punishment, but it's really not. It's protection. And we look it through, like, what do I want? What do I need? But God has that under control. And I think that when we humble ourselves and take a step back, like what the Ninevites did, we recognize God's glory throughout whatever we think.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And he finally, in this one, is like, okay, God, I'll do it to you.
Yeah.
I'll follow what you say.
After getting swallowed by a fish.
I was doing something. He's like, fine, no more.
Were they rich? These people, were they rich?
They were pretty, like, it describes it here as a great city.
Okay, so it makes me think they probably wore lots of flashy clothes, and to humble themselves so much, dressed in sackcloth, you know, they really were trying to be humble. Because, like, obviously they were probably walking around and, like, I mean, as we think of it now, like, they were wearing heels and a dress and whatever. You know, they were really flashy and putting themselves out there, but by wearing, exactly. But by wearing sackcloth, they were, like, humbling themselves down to the bare minimum. So that it really,
and which it makes everyone even.
Yeah,
when we're doing that,
it makes them all the same. Yeah, and I think that was really recognition to God's glory, because like that shows how much like they saw God as a higher power. Because if they wanted to, they went from these evil people who tortured people and like this is all the worst in the world, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm gonna give up all the things that make me look good and start glorifying God. Yeah. Like that's crazy.
All right, so I'm gonna be reading verses 6-10. When the king of Nineveh heard what Jonah was saying, he stepped down from his throne and took off his royal robes. He dressed himself in burlap and sat on a heap of ashes. Then the king and his nobles sent the decree throughout the city. No one, not even the animals from your herds or flocks, may eat or drink anything at all. People and animals alike must wear garments of mourning, and everyone must pray earnestly to God. They must turn from their evil ways and stop all their violence. Who can tell? Perhaps even yet God will change his mind and hold back the fierce anger from destroying us. When God saw what he had done and how they had put a stop to their evil ways, he changed his mind and did not carry out the destruction he had threatened. Was that okay? I don't need to read that.
No, you're good.
Okay, this really shows the power, though, of fasting and prayer. Because, like, these people, like, that's like a whole wake-up call. Like, Jonah's like, you're going to be destroyed. And they're like, oh, no.
Oh, my God.
Like, wait.
Okay.
Wait, that's not how we're supposed to be living. That's not right. And then they're like, even the king puts on sackcloth. And sits in ashes.
The king is someone everyone looks to like, oh, he's up there. Oh,
that is a very technical term there.
But yeah, that's pretty much.
But
Sorry, sidebar.
So I was actually watching a video about fasting the other day, and it was like talking about how like it actually makes a difference when we take like food can be our idol, and how when we like take, okay, I'm putting this away, whether it be like, for instance, like the Daniel fast is what me and my family did during COVID for like 30 days.
No, it was 21.
It was 21 days.
Like January.
But like, and that was just where we weren't eating meat, sugar, or bread. And like all we ate was like fruits and vegetables, and like I didn't think we even drank milk. Like we just basically ate fruits and vegetables and like nuts and eggs the whole time. It was very fun, but but like just like fasting comes in so many different shapes and ways. But like this act of like giving up something in order to focus your eyes on God. Like how crazy it is. Like we think, oh my gosh, fasting's this big hard thing. Oh, we can't eat for 40 days. No, it can be.
And it's an act of like self-discipline.
It's an act of worship. It's a worship, and it's like you look at the like the things about fasting, and it's so much better for you. Like the health benefits from fasting. It's like we were truly meant to do that. Isn't that crazy? Like people give up things and then God works.
So I think you're denying your flesh.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah, like they're denying their fleshly, and then like when you do that, you can, when you're hungry or
like,
whatever, you focus on prayer.
You focus on prayer. Like it's your reminder.
Like you need His strength because you can't do it alone.
Well, and I don't know if it says it in my version or not, but it mentioned mourning. Like like wearing the sackcloth and sitting in ashes was a sense of mourning, and like
for everybody.
And that's like obvious. Like they were fasting, yes, but they're also like you saying like giving up something, giving up an idol. They were denying their flesh. Like they were completely and totally repenting from God, or not from God, sorry, from their sin and like from the evil that they've been. Like their eyes have been open to, and I think that's such a big, like we talked about, it was mentioned this morning, ashes mean death, and so he like sat in a pile of ashes. I feel like that's such a huge representation of like, here's this big pile of just dying, basically. Let's sit and think about it, honestly.
Ashes also meant like renewing. Like when like it's like. Ashes means so many things. Like it's like death, but also it's renewed. It's brand new. It's just a whole crazy thing. I'm gonna go and do a study about ashes actually tomorrow, because that's interesting me. Is when people are not afraid to share the gospel, that's when Satan attacks. That's when he gets like, because like, for instance, Satan was probably tempting Jonah there. Like, don't go to Nineveh. No, you hate them. Don't go there. That was Satan trying to keep Jonah away from the potential of them being saved.
I also think it's beautiful to see how much God can use like that one thing that you do, because for one, Jonah obviously didn't want to go, and so when he did, it also like points out the ignorance of the Ninevites of how evil they were. They didn't recognize it, and then as soon as Jonah was like, hey, God's gonna destroy y'all if you don't fix this, and then they were instantly like, oh my gosh, wow, we've been messing up so much, and and I think that a lot of the time we don't recognize how much we mess up, and I think sometimes like having good friends and what is it? A man is recognized by the keep of his company or something like that. I think that when you have people around you, or when God sends people into your lives as a wake-up call, that is one of the greatest blessings He can ever give you.
Yeah, because the best friends will call you out, but not like in a judge way, but like in a I care,
helpful.
Like I care about you, I love you, so I'm gonna tell you this. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, now I'm reading Jonah 4:1-7. Jonah was greatly displeased and became furious. He prayed to the Lord, "Please, Lord, isn't this what I said while I was still in my own country? That's why I fled towards Tarshish in the first place. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger, abounding in faithful love, and one who relents from sending disaster. And now, Lord, take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live." The Lord asked, "Is it right for you to be angry?" Jonah left the city and found a place east of it. He made himself a shelter there and sat in its shade to see what would happen to the city. Then the Lord God appointed a plant, and it grew over Jonah to provide shade for his head, to rescue him from his trouble. Jonah was greatly pleased with the plant. When dawn came the next day, God appointed a worm that attacked the plant, and it withered.
But that doesn't show how great God is, that Jonah throwing a temper tantrum is complimenting God.
Yeah.
I don't know what is.
That's crazy. No,
He's just like, "You're too good. You're too great.
why would you do this? Oh, you're so awesome." He's like, like when toddlers throw a fit, they're like stomping their foot. Like,
Yeah.
Why would you do that? That's how I imagine Jonah like crying out to God. He's like, "Why would you do it? I don't like these people." I'm like, "Why?" I need to stop doing the voices. But it was like, it seems so ridiculous because like in hindsight, obviously, is 2020. So we see it like, Jonah, come on, man.
It's
like, why would you do this?
2025.
Hindsight is 2020.
Oh, I was like, I don't know what you said.
No, 2020 vision. It's like when you look at things. Yeah. Okay. So
I didn't know what you said. I was like,
they probably didn't either. No, but hindsight is 2020. So when we look at the story and we see like, obviously, like Jonah was in the wrong, but I think that, which this chapter is just labeled Jonah's anger. I think he was so blinded by his anger for the Ninevites that he couldn't get past the fact that he hated them. Like he just didn't like these people. Why would God save them? And I feel like we often ask the question like, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, why do good things happen to bad people? And so I think that's a prime example here, and which I don't want to butt into the next chapter because it kind of like reveals what God's thought process is through this, but God loves everyone. And so like his love and mercy is so unending that we can't comprehend it. And I think Jonah was struggling with this, and he was struggling with the comprehension of this, and so God is trying to teach him a lesson through giving him something and then taking it away. And I think that's one of the most powerful things God can do is that to visibly show us like through,
And a lot of us need it. Like, all of us need it, really.
like through our experiences in life. I think we are so stubborn as humans that we can't comprehend something without a visible example right in front of our faces. And I like to say that God slaps us in the face a lot of the time with like how we realize these things, because there's no way, like how ignorant we are as humans and how sinful and how selfish we are, we would ever be able to realize these things on our own.
It's a gift, 100%. Like being able to discern. Because I remember like when I was going through all my stuff of 2023, that crazy year. But like I had to like, it was like a few weeks after church camp where I finally sat down and was like, whoa. Even in the year of 2022, God was planting seeds for 2023. Like it was like we have horse blinders on, and it's like always, okay, now I'm gonna get to this next spot in life, and when I get to this spot in life, I'll be happy. And then like,
and then we keep saying that, and then we're like, oh my gosh, look at the big picture.
If I just had this, I'd be happy. If I could just get to this point in my life, I'd be like, no. If you just focus on God, you will be blessed, and that's all that matters. I saw this thing. It was Pinterest, but it was like, she believed she could, so she did. And then
Nicholas says that.
Well, I'm about to diss it so hard. Sorry, but I was like,
I don't know where you're
I think that like it's so wrong to believe in ourselves that we can do anything, because as humans we are. I mean, there are ways that we can become powerful in this world, but they are not the right ways to do things. And so our power is in the Holy Spirit and in God. And so like in my mind, as soon as I read that, I was like, I changed it. I wrote it in my notes. It was like, she believed God could, so she prayed. And I think that's a lot of the time we need to like make that shift in our lives to like, because we put it on our own, we put it on ourselves, because that's the only thing we see. That's the only, I think that's why Jonah was given this visual example. That's the only thing we see is ourselves and the situation and everything physical around us, because we don't see the Holy Spirit unless like it's revealed to us like directly. And so we have discernment, and that's kind of a hard thing to grasp most of the time. And so I think that we rely on ourselves, and I know Jonah was relying on himself because he was running away. And so I think that God just uses that.
Have you got something?
Absolutely.
She was like waiting to like. She was like, no, this is her.
Yeah. No, as soon as I said she could believe she could, so she prayed. She goes.
Okay, here we go.
Absolutely. Okay, that reminded me of. Okay, so that reminded me of what Larry said today about the how the Adam and Eve tried to cover themselves with the leaves. I forgot what kind of leaves they were.
Fig leaves.
Fig leaves. But they tried to cover themselves with fig leaves, and they hid from God, and they tried to do it themselves. No matter what they could do, they could not hide themselves. But God, rich in His mercies, He had a sacrifice, and only that sacrifice, first thing ever on this earth to die, ever. Through that sacrifice, they were covered.
Yeah.
So it's like we can sew as many fig leaves as we want together, but those fig leaves are going to fall apart. They're going to wilt and they're going to die.
And that representation is seen throughout, like over and over throughout the Bible when you read, because when you hear that story and then it's put into perspective, and then like that, like the sacrifice was made to cover us. Over and over again, that thing is seen with was it Abraham and Isaac? Abraham was willing to give his son up, and God provided another sacrifice. And then on and on throughout the Bible, all the way till we get to Jesus. I mean, there's sacrifice after sacrifice being made until the ultimate sacrifice is made.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you have more? I interrupted.
No, I thought of something, but then I forgot about it.
And then I think, he was selfish, but we're the same way, because we live in such a selfish world. And like social media, all it is me, 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 me. I want this. Like, it's literally, it's such a selfish thing. And like, I feel like we don't recognize as much, because like, I'll get scrolling and stuff, and you don't think about it, but that's how your mind becomes. Like, what you consume is how you think. And I think that we live in such a selfish world, and we all could, work on that. In more ways than
if we aren't careful of it, when we look for ourselves so much, we look for ourselves in the Bible instead of Jesus in the Bible.
Yeah, we do.
And we lose our need for Him.
But no, he said it's more like we look for ourselves and look for Jesus in the Bible.
Jesus is the main character and the main author.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to read Jonah 4:8-11. It says, "As the sun was rising, God appointed a scorching east wind. The sun beat down on Jonah's head so much that he almost fainted and he wanted to die. He said, 'It's better for me to die than to live.' Then God asked Jonah, 'Is it right for you to be angry about the plant?' 'Yes, it's right,' he replied. 'I'm angry enough to die.' And the Lord said, 'You cared about the plant which you did not labor over and did not grow. It appeared in a night and perished in a night. So may I not care about the city of Nineveh, which has more than 120,000 people who cannot distinguish between their right and their left, as well as many animals?'"
Yikes.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
So God, I was talking about that slap in the face. God gave that to Jonah right then and there. He was like, "Okay, you're upset about this. I'm going to take it away. Now you understand I'm 10 times more angry because you were trying to take away my people from me." Like, I feel like that's what we don't realize, is that when we, turn our backs on God and say like, "No, Lord, I don't want to make that decision. I don't like that person," or "I don't want to make that decision. That's too scary." God's like, "I love them as much as I love you."
Yeah.
And you're trying to say
favorites.
that. Yeah. And He's like, "You're trying to say that they deserve death." Like, that's, I mean, when we think about it, like, that's an insane claim to make, saying like, "I have the right to make that decision." Like, no, we don't.
Because when you think about it, before we had salvation, we deserve death.
Exactly.
And like everyone comes to the point where they're like that. So who are we to say that?
I hate the thought of like stealing someone's joy, like this joy that I have because of Jesus, and saying, "No, you're not allowed to have that." It's just crazy. Like, I feel like everybody has their own thing, like, but with me it's like joy. It's like I'm telling people they don't deserve the joy of the Lord, which is just incredible on itself. But like, just saying like, "No, you don't deserve this. You deserve to go and live in depression and anxiety and worry, and you deserve," like, because I feel like without God, life without God, it's just like darkness.
It's empty.
It's just like,
it's so confusing. It's like just a constant spiral of like, well, I believe in this. Well, then there's a loophole. Oh, well, then I'll believe in this. And then it just constantly goes back and forth of like,
it's lonely.
I want this, but I can't have it. And I feel like with Jesus, like, we have everything we could ever need, honestly. And I think, here Jonah is like, No, go ahead.
I said we're full.
Yeah, we're totally full with the Holy Spirit, and I mean, that's the greatest blessing we could ever ask for. Well, no, it's the greatest blessing we never asked for and never deserved. And I mean, it's not like the Ninevites were misrepresenting Christ when they turned to him. Like, they were so adamant about believing in God that they were in mourning.
Yeah.
And still Jonah is like, no, I hate them. Just let me die. Like, I can't believe I did this. Just, kill me now. Like, that's crazy. Like, why in the world would you think God let me bless these people with his power, and now I'm saying I'm so angry, I just want to leave the earth forever because I helped someone I didn't like. I mean, that's insane.
I feel like we kind of do that a little bit sometimes too. When, like, let's say, like, for instance, me and my brothers, we are working on something. For instance, it snowed here in Arkansas, and I spent so much time building this gigantic snowman. I named it Samantha. Okay, I needed help though, picking up the one snowball, like the middle part, because I'm a little weak person. So he helps me. 2 seconds worth of work, put it on there. And then he goes and takes most of the credit. And I'm like, no. This isn't my snowman. I did this. Like, it's Samantha's mine. But like, I feel like we kind of do that. Like, that's just like, it's not maybe to that extent that all sin is equal. Like, but like, when somebody else gets credit or too much credit for something that you did, it's just like, we're selfish and we want that.
And I think that you're talking about you're saying I felt like that was my thing. I think that when we go off of feelings, ignorance as humans, because we're denying God and accepting that flesh part of ourselves, because when we go off of feelings, if something feels wrong or the vibe's off, then we don't want to do it. And that's not what God's will is for our lives. It's denying our flesh. It's not going with what society says. It's not going
follow
with
your heart.
follow your heart. Like,
That's
our heart is
deceitful and wicked.
The heart is deceitful.
It is ugly. It is.
And that's exactly what Jonah is saying. Like, he's like, I don't feel like this is the right decision. And God's like, too bad. Like, I love these people and I'm adamant about them turning to me, and this is an amazing thing. And you're making it about yourself, because I think when we put it in perspective, we think it's us because we're the only ones that see what we're doing. Because, like, this podcast, for example, we don't see each other study this stuff. We don't see each other, taking notes, reading and stuff. And I think that sometimes it can feel like we're alone in it and that we're doing this alone. But we're not. Like, when we come together like this, we see, like, oh, they learned this or they did that. And Jonah doesn't have that perspective here. He's like, I did this. I had to come all the way here. I did all this work. I went through a storm, and God placed that storm because he wanted these people to be blessed. God made that fish swallow you because he needed these people to be blessed and to be saved. And you were the person he chose to do that. And so, in spite of your feelings and in spite of what your heart is telling you, this is the right decision. And now he's just upset because he thinks that, he has the right to be when he doesn't.
And that the tree, I'm going back to the tree, and like how it brought shade, it brought comfort, it brought relief, but that tree eventually died, right? And it made me think of, like, what people value on this earthly side, like money, fame, like that all will perish. But the one thing that doesn't is God. He don't perish, and that made me think of that. And it's like, he needed that tree to die so he could realize how selfish he was, and he could, like, look at himself and be like, oh, I've messed up. And I think sometimes we need to do that. We need things taken away from our life to realize what we really have. And like, it makes me think of, like, Caitlin and I have been to Guatemala the past 2 years.
Just thinking
and like, when you go to a different country, you see, like, they're happy with what they have, but they don't have a lot. And like, they're so joyful, and it's really a beautiful thing to see. But like, and then you come back here and you're like, oh my gosh, you're so thankful for certain things. And like, when you don't have something, you realize how grateful you are for it. And I think Jonah really needed to know that.
But we don't have to outline somebody else for God to be proud of us. He's proud for our one thing that we did. And it's like, he has the same reaction to one person being saved or hundreds.
Like, you don't have favorites.
And it's like, awesome. It's crazy because it's like,
that's one of the best things, is that, like, he sees the little things that we do when no one else does. And like, when, like, those I know everyone has them, like they don't talk about them, so I'm not going to talk about mine, but like those little things we do in our room that like just we enjoy, you know, those little, it's not really a hobby, but it's a habit, and we just like sitting down and doing that one thing, and God praises us for it because he gave us that thing to enjoy, and that he gave us that desire to do the thing. And so when we're actually doing it and fulfilling his will through it, and I mean, it doesn't have to be anything major, but like when we're doing it with a praising mindset, like with a worshipful mindset, I think that like that's one of the things he's most proud of, because it's one of those little details that God gave us individually. And he's like, yeah, and he's like, I mean, that tiny little design that he put in us, like the one little DNA sprinkle, whatever it is, he sees us using it, and like I think of God as like a father, and so, you know, like that one, you know, like your dad's the loudest in the crowd, he's like cheering you on the loudest, but then he's also a best friend because he's there all the time, he knows all your habits, he knows all your little quirks and whatever, and he loves it. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things, is that God saw the Ninevites that way. God accepted, like he knew, yes, they're making bad decisions, but so did Jonah, and so did so did everyone in the Bible. And so I think that's what we put the Bible characters into this perspective of where we are such outsiders. But in reality, like we think like these were people. These are people that laughed and loved and enjoyed life, and when they finally realized that we're doing wrong, that repented, and were able to enjoy it even further because of how God used Jonah.
It's like our blessing, some of our things that we don't like appreciate, that we don't like, that we don't want to have to deal with, are actually blessings. And when we get to look at it through the lens of God, through the lens of he created and he loves it, it makes doing those things so much better. Or like when you threaten to lose those things. Like for instance with me, sorry, my nose is good. With me, when I used to show pigs, so I hated washing my pigs until like 2 years, and my mom was like, yeah, we're gonna have to stop soon. And then I like looked at it differently. I was like, I should be enjoying this. I might have to stop showing hogs soon. This is actually fun. So like when we look at it through like the lens of like a perspective of I get to do this instead of I have to do this.
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Girls in the Garden. We hope that you enjoyed it and that it blessed you in some capacity, and hope to see you next time.